Thank you for introducing, and thanks to organizing for inviting me. Well, the title is Two Kinds of Negation, which is not to say that there are just and only two kinds of negation, but I will talk about these two kinds of negations and how they affect the problem of presuppositions. Here's the content of my talk. Well, there is pretty much stuff, so maybe that I will skip something, but and I will try to keep within time limit, so that I have to finish at a 12:15. Okay. Okay. So first I will briefly characterize the difference between presupposition versus mere entailment. Then, because this difference has much in common with that 100 years contention between the opinion whether definite descriptions are Russellian or Strawsonian. And also, this difference has very much in common with the so-called topic focus articulation of a sentence. And then my proposal of the solution of the problem versus who was right versus Russell and Strawson. And I will finish with the general analytic schema of sentences that come attached with the presupposition. Hopefully that I will come to that point. So here are some examples of sentences that come attached with presuppositions. When we say the King of France is or is not bald, then, well, on Strawsonian reading, it presupposes that the king's office does not go vacant, that it is occupied. In other words, that the King of France exists. Tom stopped or did not stop smoking presupposes that Tom is an ex-smoker. Otherwise, you cannot stop doing something you have never done. If Tom knows or does not know that arithmetic is not decidable, presupposes that arithmetic actually really is not decidable. But the sentence, Tom found the fountain of youth, merely entails that the fountain of youth exists. So what's the difference? P is a presupposition of S if the proposition P is entailed both by S and by negated S. So that if P is not the case, then neither S nor negated S can be true. Hence, S has no truth value. And S merely entails P. At that case, from the negated form of S, we cannot deduce anything about the truth value of P. So that I really do follow Frege and Strawson in treating survival under negation as the most important test for presupposition. So, two kinds of negation. The first one I call narrow scope or Strawsonian negation. I will use that all the time, that well-known example of the King of France. So Strawsonian negation is the King of France is not bald. And it ascribes the property of not being bald to the holder, if any, of the king's office. So that if there is no holder, there is nobody to ascribe the property to, and the sentence or the proposition denoted by this sentence has no truth value. But there is another kind of negation that I call wide scope or Russellian negation. It is not true that the King of France is bald. Now we ascribe the property of not being true to the whole proposition that the King of France is bald, so that the proposition is being negated. Well, the question is, does it matter? In my opinion, yes, it does. Because while Strawsonian reading, Strawsonian narrow scope negation is presupposition-preserving, wide scope Russellian negation is presupposition-denying. And what's also interesting about these two readings, that they are co-entailing, yet not strictly equivalent, because we model propositions as properly partial functions, mappings from possible words and times to truth values. So that, suppose that it is true that the kin exists and is bold, then both Strawsonian and Russellian reading get a truth value true. Suppose that, again, presupposition is true, the kin exists, but is not bold. Then both readings are simply false. But the difference is here. If the kin does not exist, the presupposition is false, then Russellian reading gets the truth value false, while Strawsonian reading, the proposition has no truth value. There is a gap, truth value gap. And that's the difference. Hence, these two readings are co-entailing, yet not, strictly speaking, equivalent. Well, well-known paper of undenoting of Bertrand Russell, and I think I can skip over because we all know what has happened. Russell's key idea is the proposal that a sentence like the F is a G should be understood to have the logical form. There is an X, and it is the only X such that F, and this X has a property G. And this contention or this conception was subjected to a fair amount of criticism. In my opinion, the main objection is this one, that Russell simply got the truth conditions wrong in important cases of using descriptions when there is no unique F. Moreover, okay, we might object that Russell's translation of a simple atomic sentence like the F is a G into the molecular form, there is an F, and at most one thing is an F, and this thing is a G, is rather enigmatic because it disregards the similarity between analysandum and analysans. Well, Russell himself defended this view because he said we have to disclose, we have to discover the logical form. And this criticism was actually launched by Peter Strawson, and as I said, Russell's theory predicts the wrong truth conditions for sentences like the King of France is bold, because according to Russell, such a sentence is currently false, and according to Strawson, it is neither true nor false. There is a truth value gap. Because, sure, if it were false, then it must be true that the King of France is not bold, which in turn entails that there is a unique King of France contrary to the assumptions. Hence, the sentence not only entails, but also presupposes the existence of the King of France, presupposes that the office doesn't go vacant. Well, Russell was pretty upset by this criticism. If time allows, or maybe later in a break, we had a conference and I shared a table with the widow of Peter Strawson, and she told me an incredible story about the discussion between Peter Strawson and Russell. Okay, in 1957, Russell in response wrote, suppose, for example, that in some country there was a law that no person could hold public office if he considered it false that the ruler of the universe is wise. I think that an avowed atheist who took advantage of Mr. Strawson's doctrine to say that he did not hold this proposition false would be regarded as a somewhat shifty character. And the battle ranges on. Strawson himself came to doubt whether the debate can be settled by a brisk little argument. Donnellan in 1966 came with an interesting proposal that there is a sense, and I agree with this proposal, in which both Strawson and Russell are right and also both are wrong, because definite descriptions can be used in at least two different ways. In an attributive way, the sentence should be read as something like, we are talking about G's, and among those things that are the G's, there is a unique F. And on this reading, Russellian truth conditions go well, are correct. But there is another referential use. The F is used to pick out a specific particular individual, and we predict of that individual that it is a G, and we have Strawsonian truth conditions. And the battle still ranges on. Ludlow in 2007 says that in some cases descriptions are Russellian, and in other cases they are Strawsonian. Kripke, of course, proposed that it is a matter of pragmatics. Neal supported Russell's view. On the other hand, a number of logicians and linguists have recently come to Strawson's defense. And still, Fintel Kaifon in 2004 published a paper. Would you believe it? The king of France is back. And in this paper, Fintel actually defends the opinion that definite descriptions always trigger an existential presupposition, so that they are always Strawsonian. Mind in 2005 published a special issue, essentially later, a collection on this discussion, etc., etc. Here is my proposal. Actually, my proposal is that that the problem is the proper division of labor. I'm going to show that definite descriptions are not deprived of a self-contained meaning, and they denote one and the same entity that we call office or role in any context. Thus, they are not Russellian. But Russell was nevertheless right that the definite description df does not refer to a definite individual. Rather, it denotes a condition to be contingently satisfied by the individual, if any, that happens to be df. And such conditions are explicated in our theory in terms of possible word intensions, hence functions from possible words and times two, at most one individual. We call these intentions roles or offices to be occupied by at most one individual per word time per. Third, I'm going to show that Donnellan was right, that sentences of the form the F is a G are ambiguous, but their ambiguity does not concern a shift of meaning of the definite description df. Rather, the ambiguity concerns different topic focus articulations of these sentences, or in other words, different suppositions in which one and the same meaning occurs, either intentionally, the dicto, or extensionally, the re. So that my solution is this: Russell and Strawson, of course, took themselves to be at loggerheads, whereas, in fact, they spoke at cross purposes. The receive view still tends to be that there is a room for at most one of the two positions, since they are deemed incompatible. And they are, of course, incompatible if they must explain the same set of data. but they should not. One theory is excellent at explaining one set of data, but poor at explaining the other one, and vice versa. So, topic focus ambiguity. Strawson's case. The description df is a topic, occurs as a topic of the sentence, and some g, the focus, is predicated about the topic. This corresponds to referential use, and the sentence really does presuppose the existence of a unique f. But there is another option. The other option is g occurring in the topic and the f in the focus of the sentence. This reading corresponds to attributive use, and the truth conditions are as specified by Russellian analysis. They do not presuppose, but only entail the existence of a unique f. Of course, then there is also a neutral reading, and that's the reading defended by that paper of Kai von Fintel. Would you believe that the King of France is back? To illustrate these ambiguities, consider this simple sentence. The Pope of the Roman Catholic Church visited the Pope of the Coptic Orthodox Church in 2010. I know it's not true, but doesn't matter. But Francisco will visit or visit it. Doesn't matter. So we have got this sentence. What I am going to show, there are at least 4 non-equivalent readings. First, the topic is the Catholic Pope. The Catholic Pope visited the Coptic Pope in 2010. And this reading, the sentence entails that the Coptic Pope existed in 2010 and presupposes that the Catholic Pope exists now. The other possibility, the Coptic Pope is a topic. Then the situation goes vice versa, of course. But there is another reading. The sentence can be an answer. Imagine a scenario where you're asking, oh, what happened in 2010? Oh, well, in 2010, the Catholic Pope visited the Coptic Pope. And this reading, the sentence merely entails that both the popes existed in 2010. And then there is neutral reading, and under neutral reading, the sentence presupposes that both the popes exist now. So that we have 4 valid arguments. The Catholic Pope visited the Coptic Pope in 2010. The Catholic Pope is Francisco. The Coptic Pope in 2010 was Shenouda III. Hence, Francisco visited Shenouda III in 2010. The Coptic Pope topic was visited by the Catholic Pope in 2010. The Coptic Pope is Tawadros II. The Catholic Pope in 2010 was Benedict XVI. Hence, Tawadros was visited by Benedict in 2010. Third, sorry, I skipped something. Well, yeah. Now we are talking about what happened in 2010. So that in 2010, the Catholic Pope was Benedict, and the Coptic Pope was Shenouda III. Hence, in 2010, Benedict visited Shenouda. And on that neutral reading, the Catholic Pope now is Francisco. The Coptic Pope is Tawadros II. Hence, Francisco visited Tawadros II in 2010. So I'm going to demonstrate that there is the semantic nature of this topic focus difference by means of a logical analysis. And moreover, if time allows, I'm going to show that the proposed solution generalizes to the problem, generalizes the problem of definite descriptions to any sentences differing in their topic focus. articulation, that topic always triggers, is connected with a presupposition, whereas focus triggers mere entailment. Well, I think I can skip the exposition about TIL because Pavel Materna introduced TIL. Maybe the most important feature of TIL that its semantics is procedural. We explain meanings as abstract procedure, and moreover, from the formal point of view, TIL is a lambda calculus of partial functions. We work with properly partial functions, in particular with propositions with truth value gaps, so that it's quite natural that I vote for TIL as my background theory. Well, okay, we can skip that. The schema is this expression encodes a procedure, something like an instruction, how to evaluate in any state of affairs. I will skip over TIL ontology, constructions. Again, it's lambda calculus with procedural semantics, so that lambda abstraction transforms into the very procedure of creating or declaring a function by abstracting over the values of variables. Application is composition. It transforms into the very procedure of applying a function produced by the first constituent at the arguments produced by the remaining constituents of the composition. And then there is special construction double execution, because in our stratified TIL ontology, constructions are objects sui generis, so that constructions can be constructed by higher order constructions, and thus constructions can be executed twice over. And that's double execution. Can go on. So back to two kinds of negation. Well, Boolean negation, that's clear, is a function from truth value to... Oh, sorry, I have got a mistake. Just omicron, of course. But there is another negation, proposition Russellian negation. And we model this negation by applying properties of proposition that I call true, false, and undefined. Maybe that this is quite illustrative. A proposition P is true in a given index of evaluation if it is neither false nor undefined. It is false in a given index of evaluation if it is neither true nor undefined. And it is undefined if it is neither true nor false. Quite natural. So that Strawsonian reading, the King of France is a topic, okay. Russellian reading, boldness is a topic. Among those who are bold, there is a King of France. You would most probably protest. This cannot be true, for there is no King of France now. And such a reading, the sentence is about boldness, claiming that boldness is instantiated by the King of France, focus, and does not presuppose merely entail the existence of the King of France. And here it is formally Strawsonian narrow scope negation of the sentence the King of France is bold is this one. Simply, it is not true that the holder of this office at a given word time pair of evaluation has at this word time the property of being bold. Russellian analysis is this one, but it is provably equivalent, strictly equivalent to this propositional, to this analysis. It is true in a given word time of evaluation that the King of France is bold. So the Russellian wide scope negation comes down to this. It is not true that this proposition is not true. And indeed, this proposition is not true because it is undefined. So that, as I already mentioned, these two readings are co-entailing, yet they denote different propositions. They are not strictly equivalent. So, well, under Strawsonian reading, two principles that are valid: existential presupposition and substitution of co-referring terms. Here is the proof. And as I promised, I will generalize this method to not only to definite descriptions, but to any sentences with general terms. Here is an example of Peter Strawson. All John's children are asleep. And here is the analysis with John's children as a topic. Of course, there is another scenario, and then it would be different. We could be talking about those who are asleep, and this would be an answer, well, among those who are asleep are all those children, all John's children, and that Russellian reading, the sentence would only entail that John has children. But if the topic is John's children, we could explain that procedural meaning like this. If John has any children, then check whether each and every one of them is asleep, else fail to produce a truth value. And here is a TIL analysis. What remains? Well, we have to define the function if then else fail, but its definition is quite straightforward, easy. It's actually a two-phase instruction. First, check whether the condition is true, and if so, vote for the construction C as the one to be executed, and then double execution, execute this one. If not, then no truth value. Well, and here it is in more details how we analyze if P then C else D as a two-phase instruction. At the first phase, we make a choice between C and D to be executed based on the condition, and in the second phase, we execute the chosen construction, so that it's obvious that hyperintensional logic is needed here to operate on procedures, not only on their products, as we do in TIL. Yeah, and I come to the concluding remarks just in time. Yes. Okay, so, well, of course, there is a matter of pragmatics, which is the intended reading, and logical analysis itself cannot disambiguate any sentence, because it simply presupposes full linguistic competence. So that, in my opinion, logicians should work hand in hand with linguists, as we do in our project, Hyperintensional Logic for Natural Language Analysis. Yet, our fine-grained method of logical analysis can contribute to disambiguation by making these hidden features explicit and logically tractable. So that in case a sentence has more senses, is ambiguous, we simply furnish the sentence with different TIL constructions, and having a formal fine-grained encoding of a sense, we can then automatically infer the relevant consequences. Here are some references. The book. Actually, this talk is based on this paper that is forthcoming in Logic and Analyse. Thank you for your attention.